All eyes are now on the upcoming U.S. presidential election. About 3 months are left until the election day, and Hillary Clinton from the Democratic Party and Donald Trump from the Republican Party have had a fierce competition as the clear frontrunners. On today's Upfront, we discuss the major issues facing the U.S. presidential election and its expected impact on the global politics as well as diplomacy.
Candidates for the U.S. presidential election, which will be one of the biggest events in the U.S. this year, have finally been decided through the national party conventions. Donald Trump has officially become the Republican Party's nominee for president, and Hillary Clinton has officially become the Democratic presidential nominee. Clinton has become the first woman to be nominated as the presidential candidate of a major U.S. political party. Also, the candidacy of Donald Trump, a businessman with no experience in politics, has also attracted a lot of attention. Clinton and Trump, who will win the White House? The U.S. presidential election has garnered a lot of global attention. The U.S., as the largest economy in the world in terms of nominal GDP and the third largest population in the world, has had a great influence on various global issues in the field of economy, diplomacy, and security. So all eyes are now on the election pledges that have been announced by the two candidates of the U.S. presidential election. First of all, both candidates have promoted protectionist views on trade policy. Trump has strongly emphasized his America First platform toward trade policy.
The most important difference between our plan and that of our opponent is that our plan will put America first. Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
Concerns have been raised at the same time over the possible rise of nationalism, along with the protectionist trade policies promoted by the two candidates. Policies toward North Korea have also risen as the biggest issue. Clinton has focused more on maintaining the existing strong sanctions, while Trump has mentioned the possibility of having a dialogue with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. In that sense, the result of the U.S. presidential election is expected to bring a significant change to the security dynamics of the Korean Peninsula. Based on their election pledges, Clinton and Trump have shown a tight race, running neck and neck against each other. The two candidates have especially put a lot of efforts to appeal to the voters in the Rust Belt, one of the key battlegrounds.
But we are visiting places that prove what Americans can do. We are the most productive, competitive workers in the world. We just need to give our people the chance to succeed.
About 3 months are left until the election date, which is November 8th. Upfront discusses the expected impact of the U.S. presidential election on the global society, as well as the future of Korea-U.S. relations.
For today's discussion, we're joined by great experts here in the studio. We have Seong-gun, Professor of Political Science at Kyung-hee University.
Okay, thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And we have Lee Shin-hwa, Professor of Political Science and International Relations at Korea University. Welcome to the program. All right, let's start with Professor Seo. Let's start with the significance of this presidential election. Of course, U.S. is one of the superpowers, so even though it's a domestic contest, but it has historically had a great impact on the rest of the world. How would you characterize the impact of it?
Well, I thought about the international impacts driven by these presidential elections in the United States, and it's a little bit more complicated than thought. So one thing for clarification is that the American voters are known to be casting their ballots on the basis of the economy. So if the economy is going well, then the incumbent party, incumbent candidate will win the elections. Or if the economy is in the South, then the challenging party is going to win the White House. So that is kind of the number one criteria American voters are having when they cast their ballots. But there are some historical moments when we can think about the cases when the international relations and American politics are interacting with each other.
Right.
So those cases are, for example, in 1916, the then President Woodrow Wilson was making a nation tour for his re-election campaign, and his campaign slogan was, "He kept us out of war."
I see.
So back then it was kind of the World War I going on, but American voters were not ready to get involved in that European war. But as you know, in 1917, right after the election, Woodrow Wilson had to make a choice of going into the World War I.
Right.
And one more thing is 1952 election, which is having a great impact on Korea as well. Then challenger Dwight Eisenhower was running, and right before the election, he mentioned that I shall go to Korea. That was it. He did not lay out any detailed plans, any specific roadmap on how to end the Korean War. But the American voters trusted his credentials, former NATO chief of the commander-in-chief, and other kind of military experiences. So he won the elections.
Right.
But
so domestic matters, especially economy, because it drives in part trade policies and also diplomatic matters.
Right.
So domestic election as it is, but has a greater impact in the around the world.
Right. So one more little thing is that, but this election in 2016 is very unique because I don't recall any elections in which two different party candidates are presenting two very contrasting views on where America should be in global politics. But now in this election, Donald Trump is saying that, oh, we are anti-free trade. And Hillary Clinton, of course, cannot say that she is for free trade because of the election plans, but she is more kind of inclined to say that we need to maintain the alliances. We need to kind of maintain our role as a global leader in international politics.
On that note, Professor Lee, these two candidates, I mean, we know who they are, Donald Trump from the Republican Party and Hillary Clinton from the Democratic Party. But do you expect that those two candidates represent a very big change agent? Do they come with a kind of expectation that it'll change domestic and also a lot of things in the global
But once either of them become a president, we will see what happens. It remains to be seen. But it is definitely a historical event because whomever become a president, either breaking through the glass ceiling or like a mainstream politics, what we call Washington politics, right? So whomever become it will be a very historical event. But another point we need to think about is, although Professor Seo, you mentioned about economy matters, in any election in this country these days, I think they have a clear target. Particularly Trump has a clear target. It's not only outsider like Japan in the 1980s and now China and many other countries. He was very specific about the term the migrants. The migrants are like taking away the American tax money. Right? And American tax money should use for the America. I think that was a very clear message. So I think U.S., I'm not sure whether they will go up or go down when it comes to the world politics, the scene. But still, I think it's going to set the tone for U.S. which direction they will go. So I think it's a very important event.
It was domestic matters setting the tone for the elections. Whether they would translate to a foreign policy, whether it's realistic, we'll continue to talk about it. Now, Professor Seo, about Hillary Clinton, I mean, this is a second attempt at the presidency election. And we know that she has been kind of active in a political scene. She was a First Lady and then Secretary of State, a Senator and Secretary of State. So I think people are not surprised that she is running. But is the environment ripe? As Professor Lee says, first woman president breaking the glass ceiling. Is this the year to do it?
Well, I mean, up until last year when she announced her candidacy, there was kind of a lot of rumor going on whether she was going to run again or not because of her health issues and others. But she finally decided to throw the towel into the ring. And I think back then she might have thought about Richard Nixon. When Richard Nixon failed to win the election in 1960, but 8 years later, 1968, he challenged again, and that time he won the election.
I see.
So Hillary Clinton was kind of thinking about sort of new Nixon style of campaigns, so going small, going low, being very humble. And getting back to your question about why she made a decision to run again, the first reason is she wanted the job. There's no doubt about it. But the second of all, she thought that she could win this election. How she could insert her name, Hillary Clinton, into the Obama coalition that won the election back to back in 2008 and 2012. The Obama coalition is composed of young voters, women voters, gay community, and black voters. Right? So replacing Obama with Hillary might be working kind of equation for any Democratic Party candidate in 2016. So that might be one consideration she might have had. Of course, I mean, I didn't talk to her, but that's a kind of...
And Obama doing not so badly these days is not a bad thing for Clinton as well.
But on that note, Hillary, I think, have a quite strong point, right? Well, it's not only historical first female president. I think that is not only that, but it goes beyond the so-called gender card, because she's quite extremely capable and ready and qualified. I think that image not many people worry about or not many people argue about. And as we know, can she be trusted, right? So trust thing is always problematic. So probably the reason she decided to move on is she can get over the thing for that the Whitewater scandal, and also the private use of the email server during the secretary
of State Day.
State secretary, right? And also, I think she's quite political, the debater, right? Because she's quite formidable political fighter, because she somehow won that popular Bernie Sanders, and also I think she's pretty doing well to deal with that Donald Trump, right? And she tried to set her own tone as well. So I think she think about whether she can come over that, because as we know, she often claimed that she's not good speaker like her husband or Obama, right? So she think compared to the Donald Trump, she think she's not that confident when it comes to public speech or dealing with media. But now probably she started to think about, she got more confident about whatever challenge or whatever criticisms come over, she's ready to get over that as well.
Right. This is not the first rodeo, as they say. She's seasoned and she's a veteran. Right. How about Donald Trump? Professor So, are you surprised that he's come this far? I mean, there are a lot of people who said that was a kind of a media gig or a publicity stunt at first, but here we are. He's the nominee, he's the political candidate for the Republican Party. Does that surprise you still?
I'm being surprised every single morning still. It's a truly political shock. And Trump candidacy, the standard bearer of the grand old party, nobody would have expected that to happen in American politics. Then that leads us to think about where American politics is going right now. The collapse of the middle class people, and especially, well, personally, I thought that I did not know that America was kind of still the country of the white working class. We need to focus on these people, this conservative white working class. So they had been kind of deserted by either party, by both parties. So if you are liberal but white working class, then you had been kind of taken care of by the Democratic Party in the name of the labor unions and New Deals. But if you live in the South and if you have a conservative ideology but no college education, low income, white working class, then you need to think about the Republican Party as your party. But the Republican Party has become the party of country club. The Republican Party has only paid attention to rich people, the big businesses, and trade agendas. So these conservative white working class people did not have any representative to voice their concerns, and they found Donald Trump as their kind of standard bearer. So standard bearer of the Republican Party, but standard bearer of the conservative white working class, and the Republican Party and the conservative white working class are having very, very different agendas now. So Trump is, of course, in this mood of anti-establishment, anti-Washington. Trump is a perfect fit. There's no doubt about it. And his background of kind of successful real estate mogul and business kind of things. And one more thing is, when you listen to his campaigning and his debates, his use of language is very, very plain, very simple, very easy to understand. And he knows how to repeat the same message over and over again. When he was doing his acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention the other week, he closed his remarks by saying that I'm going to win. I'm going to win big. I'm going to win again.
Very simple message.
Yeah, right. Winning. It's a kind of strong message, very much resonating with the conservative white working class.
There are only about 80 days left, actually, until the U.S. presidency election. And the two candidates are in tight races, especially in the battleground states. The two candidates have made acceptance speeches at each party's convention and have also unveiled their future goal for the administration. Let's take a look at the short video footage about the major comments of the two candidates before we move on.
The most important difference between our plan and that of our opponent is that our plan will put America first. Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. Together, we will lead our party back to the White House, and we will lead our country back to safety, prosperity, and peace. We must immediately suspend immigration from any nation that has been compromised by terrorism. We will never, ever sign bad trade deals. America first. And we will make America great again. God bless you and good night. I love you.
But we are visiting places that prove what Americans can do. We are the most productive, competitive workers in the world. We just need to give our people the chance to succeed. He also talks a big game about putting America first. Well, please explain what part of America first leads him to make Trump ties in China, not Colorado. Let's be stronger together. Look to the future with courage and confidence. Let's build a better tomorrow for our beloved children and our beloved country. Thank you.
Right. We listened to the candidates and we heard "Make America Great Again" and also "Stronger Together." Those slogans have shown a different kind of directions that they're proposing to the American public. On my back, we're now seeing a graph that compares major pledges that both candidates are making. They're similar in some pledges, but they have completely diverged from each other in many different issues like diplomatic security, immigration, and terrorism. Now, how do you, what's your take on this comparison of these two pledges, Professor Song?
Well, one big similarity is, of course, about trade. Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party has been the party of sort of protectionism, I would say, anti-free trade or fair trade. And there's no surprise about it. But the grand old party, the Republican Party, has been the party of big business, the party of trade. But now, this time around, Donald Trump, new candidate, is trying to lead the United States into a very new direction in terms of trade and global economy. And that is one big difference from the previous Republican Party positions and getting closer to the Democratic Party as well. And as you know, Hillary Clinton had to be forced, had to change her position on the TPP. She was kind of sort of okay with TPP, but when she was starting to campaign, she got pressed to change into the opposition, and she now stands against the TPP. And when you look at the Democratic Party convention, there was no TPP, no TPP, kind of chanting all 4 days.
Right.
So in terms of trade, I would say there is a huge similarity between the two parties. But in terms of security and alliance politics, it's very interesting because now it's kind of a reverse position. The Republican Party is, Donald Trump is talking about, oh, NATO is not effective. We need South Korea to pay more for the U.S. troops, et cetera, and even he mentioned about the possibility of U.S. troops withdrawal from the Korean Peninsula. That is kind of very shocking sort of position to the establishment, foreign policy, think tanks, and the Republican Party as well. But on the contrary, Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, is emphasizing that, oh, we are kind of reducing the cost because of these alliances, South Korea, Japan, and Australia. So now it's very interesting kind of reversal of two political parties in terms of security and military alliances.
Right.
And that is one kind of point, I would say.
That's very interesting because traditionally there has been a divide between, as you described, the big business kind of conservative party and the liberal party. But in this campaign, I think you alluded that before, but there's a divide, a little bit different directions. Actually, both professors have commented on it. Establishment versus anti-establishment. So when they kind of converge together on the anti-establishment side, we see a similar kind of rhetorics coming out. But then they have radically different positions. Right?
But you know, when it comes to, well, let's say domestic politics is very important, but let's say just focusing on foreign policy for a while. When it comes to foreign policy, the head of state is the important, right? Because that's why we said, when it comes to level of analysis of foreign policies, we say what kind of individual we have as a leader. But again, there are another thing, what we call organizational procedure thing, you know, that there are MOU, there are kind of things you need to follow if you belonging to this country, because you are not only Trump, you are not only Hillary Clinton, you are president of the United States, where they have their system and their law and the value and all other things. And I think no matter who become a president, they cannot ignore, you know, their country's tradition and country's value or country's system or law. So I think that's what I would like to say. Individuals are important, but I mean the system it has to go back and back. You remember in 1970s, Jimmy Carter was highlighting human rights diplomacy. He pushed that really hard. In the beginning, it seems to be working, but at the end, it doesn't seem to that work, and he lost his second term presidency.
Right.
So having said that, president itself is very important, but I think how he can play with his domestic or international partners are very, very important. So as he also mentioned, maybe that can go to a different direction when it comes to security and alliance politics. So maybe the Hillary was focusing on cooperation or as she said, the stronger together. But still, I don't think she can get rid of the Trump syndrome. Well, it's not only trade protectionism, but also kind of isolationism. What I'm saying is, it's very interesting to note that usually isolationism is somewhat belongs to Democratic Party, while the more active engagement and the more involvement is belonging to Republicans. As you see in George Bush's involvement in the the Iraqi war, and also Ronald Reagan had a decisive role to break down the Cold War structure, right? In the meantime, Thomas Jefferson was like a champion for isolationism. Of course, at that time, U.S. was weak and they cannot involve. They didn't want to involve in the European warfare, but still, so it was different. But Donald Trump, obviously, the candidate from Republican, was even stronger position than the traditional, the Democrat was the taking on when it comes to foreign policies. So my point is, Trump isolationism, and he was trying to making America great again. Under the flag of that, he wants to put more burden, financial and other burden on his alliance, and that will give us some problem in the alliance politics. But still, I think he cannot simply or flatly reject or ignore the other mainstream Republicans' position. So I don't think we should that much worry about the breakdown of alliance or like a sudden change of the position for Korea, U.S. relation, or U.S. and other U.S. relation with the rest of the world.
Right. So on the other hand, Hillary Clinton being having been a Secretary of State, and a lot of policies have been initiated or signed on under her watch. So do you expect that the foreign policies, and especially the security areas, they would be kind of a continuation of the same kind of policies that we see under the Obama administration?
Of course. I mean, Hillary has some dilemma, of course. And now she does not want her presidency to be Obama's the third term. Nobody likes that idea if you're running for the presidency. But there is a reality that Obama is having around 50% of approval ratings these days. Right. And he is very popular personally. And Hillary Clinton, under his presidency, she was the Secretary of State, and she is known to be the architect of the pivot to the Pacific. And she has, well, how many years? I mean, from the First Lady days in the 1990s, and the Senator from New York, and Secretary of State. So, I mean, during all that past periods, she has collected a bunch of talented people, ranging from Kurt Campbell to Jim Steinberg to Wendy Sherman, and those kind of foreign policy brains will be kind of working for President Hillary Clinton if she is elected. And of course, in terms of domestic politics, I wouldn't say any kind of drastic changes from the Obama administration in terms of gun control or climate change or immigration, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of foreign policy and alliance politics, Hillary Clinton will be someone we can rely on. I mean, I'm not saying I like her or I dislike her, but in terms of our own foreign policy responses and strategies, Hillary Clinton is much, much more reliable
and predictable.
Partner. Predictable, of course. And one thing about Donald Trump, isolationism, I noticed that there's a huge interest among Korean people and among the Korean media about whether Donald Trump is creating an atmosphere of neo-isolationism. Well, because my research area is U.S. Congress, so I'm always having some concerns about kind of too much exaggeration of what U.S. president can do if he elected. There's a term such as expectation gap.
Right.
So when we are electing someone to the White House one day, they have huge kind of expectations, but after 2 years, they are disappointed. So they are kind of voting for the other party in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. So the Congress is the kind of key in shaping or reshaping American foreign policy even if Donald Trump is being elected. So neo-isolationism is kind of, we don't need to kind of too much concern, worry about neo-isolationism because the Congress has a final say in terms of free trade and the renegotiations of alliances kind of conditions. So people are saying that, oh, if Donald Trump is elected, then, oh, they probably will press us to renegotiate the Korea-U.S. free trade agreements. I don't think so, because Congress is not in a position of kind of revisiting the Korea-U.S. free trade agreements passed by Congress back in 2011. And there is no realistic kind of chances for Congress to get back to the issues.
Right.
And if you think about the candidate versus party, the Republican Party is in dilemma because if Donald Trump is the president, and Trump is proposing trade protectionism kind of agendas, but the party is still the party of free trade. So their constituency and their own beliefs versus their own president dilemma. Democratic Party is closer to the party of anti-free trade, but they do not side with the President Trump because it's their president. It's the other party's president. So the party politics and congressional politics, if Donald Trump is elected, will get very, very complicated.
Let's talk about battle states, either swing states or battle states. Which states at this point would be kind of a key battleground?
Roughly speaking, you need to go to the west to pick up Nevada and Colorado, and you go to the south, and you'll find Florida and Virginia and North Carolina as swing states, and you go to the Midwestern states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, including Iowa.
Which they term Rust Belt.
Rust Belt, right. And you go up to the Northeast to pick up New Hampshire. So 10 to 12 states out of 50 states are considered battleground states, swing states, toss-up states. But now, because of the fact that Nevada and Colorado has a huge population of Latino voters, they are kind of leaning more toward the Democratic Party this time. And Ohio is the key battleground state because no Republican Party candidate won the election without having won the state of Ohio in American history. So Ohio is the key, and Pennsylvania, I guess, is also very, very important because Pennsylvania has been blue for a long time. But as you know, there are a huge number of white working class in Pennsylvania. So that's why Hillary Clinton is now spending her most of the time in Pennsylvania. Right. And Virginia is also very important. Virginia had gone red over the past 3 decades, but back in 2008 and 2012, Barack Obama carried the state of Virginia. So that's why Hillary Clinton picked up Tim Kaine, senator from Virginia, as her running mate. So Virginia is the key, and well, probably New Hampshire is a very tight place, and Florida, I have no idea. Florida is the most kind of hard state to predict.
Right.
So those 10 to 12 battleground states will be making the decision on who is going to win the White House.
Well, we know the Florida is important, and we don't know what is going on, as we've seen Al Gore and George Bush's campaign before. But my reading is, as Professor Seo has mentioned, Florida is also the very places where Hispanic populations are there. So that is not good sign for Donald Trump. But another thing is, as you mentioned, like Florida, particularly northern part of Florida, and also the Virginia, the seashore of Virginia, and New Hampshire, North Carolina, and the Arizona military bases, and all those places are battleground. But as we all know, national security is one of the key issues with this election. But Donald Trump doesn't make a convincing speech so far. So those states turn out to be the swing state is not a good sign for the Trump for the next 3 months, unless he got another good agenda settings on the military and all others.
Right. On that point, before we move on, the last question I want to make is that, as you mentioned, that they had suffered and is still suffering from bad images. But there are TV debates coming up, 3 TV debates starting with September 27th. Now, Trump being kind of a media personality and having, arguably a good media savvy to it, is this a good opportunity for Trump to turn it around and make his platform much more attractive because he's in front of the TV and he has the experience of the real life shows.
Right. Before the TV debate thing, I just wanted to make a very quick comment on the Electoral College system, because this year's race is very tight race, that there is a possibility of us seeing 269 and 269 out of the Electoral College. If there is a tie vote by the Electoral College system, then under the Constitution, it goes to the House.
Right.
And each state has 1 vote. And that is in favor of Donald Trump, because the U.S. House of Representatives is now under the control of the Republican Party. Okay, that's one quick thing. TV debates. Historically speaking, there have been kind of historic moments, kind of memorable moments in presidential TV debates. Back in 1992, when the incumbent president, Bush 41, was fighting against Bill Clinton, then governor of Arkansas. He actually, during the debate, he was keeping watching his watch. It's boring. It's when it's going to finish. So that was kind of caught by the camera. It was very, very bad sign.
There's no danger to that with Trump. So is it to his advantage?
Well, I mean, but in terms of kind of TV celebrity and TV experience, it's working for Donald Trump. There is no doubt about it. But if Hillary Clinton is able to make Donald Trump show his bad temperament, I think that's one good kind of thinkable strategy by Hillary Clinton, because
he's known to do that. So it's a double-edged sword.
But exactly. I think those things, the image and also the way he or she will talk is important. But there will be 3 TV debates, right? But there will be, I do believe, tremendous influence in the voters' mind. But still, I think more than half of them already decide, no matter what they say, no matter what they behave, or no matter what content they have, I think they already have the answer, right? So they have to think about swing voters. But for swing voters, I think the perception and image and the way they talk is important. But still, I think the American voters are, I think, sensible enough to listen to what they are talking. So what I'm saying is the content. The content delivery is very important, because that will show them the capability. So my point is, Hillary Clinton, I think she needs to focus on she's trustworthy and she meant what she said, right? Because a lot of people already know she's ready and she's qualified and she's capable. On the other hand, Donald Trump, I think he has to stop only blaming on Hillary Clinton, but he needs to set up his own agenda. Well, his agenda is now everything's anti-something, but he needs to having some agenda where he can constructively and positively bring the U.S. to that direction, right? So he has to watch her mouth, but at the same time, he needs to prove he's capable and he's also predictable and he can be a trustworthy president if he elected. I think that's the kind of the point they need to give. And here, and also TV debate is important, but I would like to recall the the Move On and Tea Party. What I'm saying is Move On is Obama was very successful to using internet and then to communicate with those voters over those online. The McCain was depending on traditional way, well, TV debate and all others. So I think that they said that is one of the decisive reasons the McCain got defeated, right? And the Tea Party means that what Republican was belonging, wants to use more. As far as I understand, that is kind of the active utilization of the grassroots people. They have no specific leader there, but in 2009 or something, when Obama making economy recovery plan, there are big kind of the civil resistance. And the Republican effectively used that Tea Party, and I heard that there are at least 2,800 the branches now in around the U.S. And Republicans, while they try to tame the Donald Trump into the box, but on the other hand, they try to utilizing this Tea Party network in order to get to the point.
Well, the similar thing happened with Obama as well.
Right. So those two things should be important.
Right. We've discussed the major issues facing the U.S. presidential election, as well as a tight race between Clinton and Trump. On the latter part of the show, I'd like to touch upon the expected impact of the election on Korea. But before that, let's take a look at the interview we had with Kim Hyun-wook, professor at Korea National Diplomatic Academy.
I think the Hillary Clinton would increase its presence in Asia and in the Korean Peninsula. And I think that would definitely include some moves like a THAAD deployment in South Korea. And by way of doing so, I think it would be more committed to the security of South Korea vis-a-vis North Korea. And also vis-a-vis China, it would wants to increase its hegemony and security in this area. Donald Trump, I think, would not be so much interested in providing security to this region and to the internet, to the Korean Peninsula. I think it's Donald Trump's focus is more on the economic benefits the U.S. deserves, rather than thinking about the provision of security or some other public goods to its allies by the United States. So I think it's from different perspectives. So I think the security of the Korean Peninsula in general would be much more in presence if Clinton becomes president rather than Clinton becomes a president. I think the U.S. would, come back to Asia more actively and assertively. And I think in that sense, of course, the U.S. and China would not try to come up with a serious clashes with each other, but still, nevertheless, despite there exist some, cooperations, the competition would still be there and would grow over time. And some issues like South China Sea issues and Korean Peninsula issues and so on and so forth, both global and regional issues. So I think more opportunities would emerge for both countries to clash each other. So I think in that case, South Korea has to think about some ways to have a productive relationship with both countries, which I think is a very tough job in diplomacy. If Donald Trump becomes a president, I think things would go unexpectedly. The alliance, I think, would be in jeopardy. U.S. and North Korean leaders would possibly talk to each other, and I think because Donald Trump would not think about the growth and rise of China as seriously, I think the Chinese influence in this area would grow in the future. So I think many things would go and evolve pretty much not like the expectations of experts.
Even during the campaign, especially Donald Trump has talked a lot about not only North Korea but South Korea as well. So Korea has been on the candidate's mind in the different different times. Now, what kind of change do you expect depending on who becomes the president?
Well, it's very weird. It's very strange to see American presidential candidates keeping talking about Korea in the presidential election. It's kind of unprecedented. There's no doubt about it. And if Donald Trump is winning the election, then nobody, including me, will be able to predict what's going to happen. So it's kind of almost sort of pointless to talk about the Donald Trump presidency and
looking at the black box
Korea.
at this point.
Right. Well, of course, one kind of risky thing he might be taking into account is this. When he, as the president, is trying to do what he has promised to do during the campaigns, and like I said, he is going to face the systemic challenges, the congressional challenges, and party politics kind of challenges. So it ends up like Donald Trump is doing almost little. Then he, as a president, might be looking around to boost up his own popularity. He might be thinking about the South China Sea. So it's a very controversial area, and that's a kind of military situation or the territorial disputes. President could kind of lead the kind of American flag into the disputed area, and to rally around flag effect kind of thing. Then it's very sort of very complicated story. It's a very dangerous situation. That's one thing I would say. And Hillary Clinton presidency, like I said, it's I don't see any big changes. And getting back to TPP, Obama got the approval from the Congress last year in the name of TPA, Trade Promotion Authority. So he could use this TPA to finish up the TPP negotiations. And there is a possibility of him bringing up this TPP agenda during the lame duck session of Congress. So even already the Bernie Sanders has warned that President Obama should not bring up a TPP agenda during the lame duck session. Lame duck session is after the November 8th election and the opening up the 115th new Congress in January. So those 2 months are still kind of, President is Obama and Congress is still controlled by the Republican Party. Very good matchup going into the direction of American internationalism. So that's one kind of situation we can think about. But Hillary Clinton, the president, I'm very interested about the pivot to the Pacific will be kind of her agenda, but during the first or second year, I don't think Korea will be number one top priority for either candidates.
We're almost out of time, but the last question is, even without the crystal ball, so the review, the Korean government has to look forward to the new leader coming into the White House. So what would be your most important advice to the Korean government?
I think we need more institutionalization of like multilateral cooperation, particularly among those so-called less stronger power. So what I'm saying is like Australia and Singapore and Philippines and Vietnam, I think they having a similar, more or less similar like experience or dilemma like what we have.
Right.
So, well, not necessarily only those 4 countries, but we have to think about what kind of multilateral cooperation and partnership we can build on to having our voice be heard in those new types of a superpower library. And also, when it comes to North Korean issue, mostly North Korean nuclear issue, but also possibly contingency planning, I think so-called minilateral cooperation is important. Like with multilateral cooperation, it's not that easy to do it. And also particularly these days, US, China, superpower both are interested in multilateral engagement on their own face, then we have no room to raise our voice, right? So minilateralism has to come with bilateral and multilateral like a structure. Like for instance, Korea, US, China, or Korea, US, Japan, and all those like a combination we have to utilize in order to raise our stance and our position. On that note, I would like to have my final remark for we have to revitalize or strengthen our relation of trilateral cooperation with U.S. and China, Japan, because I think that is a traditional one, and we share the same value, and I think we have a common threat, so we have to move on. For that, I think Korea and Japan's bilateral relation is also very important, like some kind of a defense information sharing, which we haven't had it yet, and those things has to be shared so that those constant and unpredictable military provocation by North Korea, and that is obviously common threat, right? So for that, I think we really need to cooperate with Japan and then U.S. And I think those trilateral cooperation, if that's getting stronger, and I think we're having an even bigger package of the voice toward the China and toward North Korea.
Yeah, I'm hearing structural approaches, whether it be a middle power or the regional power.
And hopefully institutionalization as well.
You have a last word.
Well, I really love to say this. We should know what we really want. I think that's the message I would really deliver to the Korean government and others. It's because we need more debates, we need more discussions about where we are, where we stand, what we really want. And so that's why I think the Korean National Assembly should play a very important role, including the congressional hearings and open discussions to let Korean people know what kind of dilemma we are facing now, what kind of options we have. So it's not like the president is doing everything. That time has passed. We need more kind of domestic debate and domestic discussions about what the best option is before us. So the first thing is we should know what we really want, want. So, and the second point is, on top of that, we do not have to make a choice between the U.S. and China. When they do not make any choices, the United States is not making any choice in terms of dealing with China, then why should we make any choice? So we should get out of this kind of fuzzy dilemma that all we need to be walking a fine line between the United States and China. I don't think that should be the case. We need to be kind of practical enough. We need to be realistic enough to get our national interest first. So there is a sort of U.S. strategy named congagement, which means containment and engagement.
I see.
If that is U.S. strategy, then why should we make any choices between U.S. and China? So we need to be very careful in not kind of pushing us to make any choice between the U.S. and China. That's my message.
I see. On that note, I thank you for your valuable contribution today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The U.S. presidential election impacts the rest of the world profoundly, even if the issues they compete on are mostly domestic to the U.S. It is more so this time around, since it appears that the candidates have different views on the role of the United States in the global community. Regardless of the outcome, more dialogue with their friends and foes around the world should be in the forefront of the new leaders' agenda. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.